Okay. Well, welcome back to the second week of this series and class that we're doing on apologetics. We're talking about fortifying our faith through reasoned defense. I thought we had a good class. Does anyone else need an outline? Mr. Doug does, and Tanika. And Keith. Okay. So we introduced this last week and about what this class was going to be about. And really, it's going to be centered around how we can talk to or what things we can talk to someone about who might be a little bit skeptical of the things that we believe. Okay, I think a lot of us in here have had experiences where we may have been caught in this kind of awkward situation, in this awkward conversation with somebody, and they're skeptical about some of the things that we believe, and we try to talk to them, but maybe it doesn't really go as well as we would hope, or as well as we like. It doesn't quite go so well for us sometimes. So this class is meant to kind of help us get equipped with the knowledge of things outside of the Bible that actually help prove the Bible and its validity. Okay? Prove the existence of God, the reality of Jesus, and the legitimacy of Christianity. Okay? So those are four really big items that a lot of people in the world today struggle with. Those four in particular. Okay? And sometimes they don't understand how we could believe in such things. Okay? Because to them, the Bible can't be trusted for various reasons. To them, they don't see the evidence for the existence of God. Jesus may not even be a real person to them, or at least be who He claimed to be. And they don't see Christianity as something that is important to follow. Okay, they just don't see it like that. So, I think just having some knowledge of those things can help us when we find ourselves talking to people who have a little bit of trouble believing in what we believe. I think these people can still be reached. I do believe that. They just have questions first, okay? And if we could give them legitimate answers to their legitimate questions, I think some of them would get on board. I really believe that, okay? So, and we just have to understand that their questions aren't wrong. Their questions aren't wrong. It's fine that they do have questions. Okay, again, questions can lead to answers, but we need to be ready and how to handle those questions. Okay, and that's fair. Okay, it's fair that they have questions, but we need to be ready to handle them. So, what I'm really aiming to accomplish in this class, really, two main goals. Okay, one is just to give you something more, not that you necessarily need it, maybe, but to give you something more to base your convictions on about the stuff that you believe. What can you anchor down to even more? You may have one thing, well, let's talk about some more. Maybe you can anchor down on that as well. Okay, so that's one thing that I want to try to accomplish, and for you to be able to tell somebody, here's another good reason why I put my trust in all of my faith in all of this stuff. Okay, here's another reason for that. All right, and then secondly, just to equip us with different arguments. Okay, equip us with the evidences. Equip us with the proofs so that we can have those and introduce those things to someone, that may not see the existence for God. They may not believe in the reality of Jesus. They may not really believe in Christianity as much, okay? So let's get some arguments behind us, proofs and stuff that we can talk about behind us. All right, so that's really the two main goals of the class, and I hope we come out of this a little bit better for it. Okay? So, where do I want to begin? Yeah, all right. So basically, we're just trying to get up to speed. We're trying to be relevant, trying to be where the culture is and has been for some time, and where it's going to continue to go. Okay, but if we want if we want a better chance at winning souls and reaching these people, we're going to have to get into this area. You have to accept that. You're going to have to get into this area. We're behind in this area. I'll just be honest with you. Okay? The church is. But we can catch back up, if you will. Okay? But anyway, a lot of people think we believe blindly. They think we're all about this stuff and we just have a blind faith about it, but that's not it. We don't believe blindly. There's proof, there's evidence, there's all kinds of things for why we believe what we believe. Okay? So let's get those things down. It's not a baseless conviction. All right? That's not what we have. It's a logical conclusion coming from the evidence that we see. Okay? Anyway. So, I think how I want to structure this class is by taking some common things that people say, common things that people have questions about, things they throw out there, and then try to handle each one of those accordingly. Okay? I feel like that was kind of a systematic way to do it, but that way it can almost act like a template. Okay? If they say this, here's where we go. If they say this, if they have this question, here's where we can kind of go and handle those things. Just show of hands, who would you want me to get some folders for you to put this stuff in, binders or something like that? We could provide those. Yes, no? Sometimes with this stuff, it's just nice to have a nice packet to keep it all together. Okay, I'll try to grab some folders, order some, and I'll have those here next week for you. Okay. Anyway, but yeah, so that's what I kind of want to do. I just want it to kind of act like a template. Okay. So let's start off on the first one tonight. Hopefully we'll get through this one. Maybe not, but let's get going on this one. So let's talk about things that have to do with the reliability of the Bible, the validity of the Bible. Veracity of the Bible, however you want to put that. But let's talk about this. Okay, here are some, actually, let me just ask you the question. I know it's on the outline, but what do you hear sometimes out there that has to do with this from people? What do people say?
That the Bible is too old, that it's obsolete.
Okay, too old, it's obsolete.
Translation of a translation of a translation of a translation.
Okay, it's been just each down the line, just translation after translation after translation, okay? What do you mean by that? Or what do they mean by that?
Like any other novel.
Okay.
It's a book.
It's got good stuff in it. Don't really see that it has a bearing on your life necessarily, but it's just another book, another historical book.
Too hard to understand.
Too hard to understand, okay? And therefore, maybe some people just don't choose to understand it. Okay? There are contradictions. People say that about this.
You can make it say anything you want it to say.
You can make it say anything you want it to say. Okay? Your interpretation is your interpretation. I've got mine. You've got yours. And that's kind of how people talk about it. There's a lot out there. And I put a few of them on the list there on your outline. And so we'll kind of just talk through those. But a lot of times people have this. These are some general claims. They say, well, hasn't the Bible been tampered with by man after all of these years? Have you ever heard that before? Yeah? The Bible has been changed over time. Kind of the translation after translation kind of idea. It's been changed over time. How do we know that it's accurately been transmitted? How do we know that what we have is legitimate? You heard that before? Debbie, yes.
I've heard, I don't know how true this is because it doesn't say in the Bible, but that there's parts left out, like for the Enoch and the Book of Enoch and all these
Sure.
things. I hear about those and
Yeah.
why
We may get there on those.
out.
We may get there on those. Yeah. That's a legitimate thing. And I know a lot of people are there, but let's hold off on that because that is a deeper discussion, a deeper conversation. It might take a little more time. All right. Okay. So then, here's what you have. where can we then go? Right? Where can we go? What can we talk to them about if this is what we hear? What reasons could we give them that would make them think about seriously investigating its trustworthiness? That's what we want to try to get at. Okay, so let's try to handle this, all right? This whole idea about, hasn't it been tampered with and so forth. All this one really is a reasonable question or questions to ask from somebody who may not be as well versed in religion or something like that, or churched, maybe we could say. It really is a reasonable question to ask if they don't even have a background in religion at all. Okay? All they're wondering is, can we trust such an ancient document and what it writes about whenever it has been passed down over, thousands of years? Right? Can we really trust that? To them, surely something has been lost. Surely something has been messed with, or surely somebody changed something or left something out, or maybe they added something to it. Right? And so to them, they're like, well, I don't know if I can really, trust anything like that. I don't know if I can be on board with what's in there. I don't know if I can trust that. Okay? So this one, it really does have a lot to it. It's got some layers to it to kind of peel back and talk through and talk about, in which we will. And if somebody will give you the time to explain, which a lot of skeptics don't, okay, but if you happen to get the time to explain, there are some logical arguments and some logical lines of reasoning for them to consider, okay? And first off, you can try to help them understand that what they're suggesting with this, hasn't it been tampered with and so forth, that what they're suggesting would actually be incredibly difficult to do. It'd be incredibly difficult to do, given the nature of how the Bible has been preserved. Okay? So you kind of have to start helping people kind of wrap their minds around what in the world they just said with this. Okay? Now they may not be thinking about it that deeply. They might, but maybe not. So you kind of have to help them through it a little bit, because a lot of times they don't really think about all of what would have to go into one of these, to such a claim about the Bible being tampered with, and they may just not know. Okay, and generally that is the case, but such as this one. Okay, so the conversation then, I feel like, would need to go here, into the area of how we got the Bible, and into the area of how the Bible was preserved. And okay, so I think that's a place that you can go if that's the questions that come up. Now you're probably, like I said, you're probably not going to have the hours that you would need, unless you meet again with them, hopefully, to really dive into all of this topic. But you can introduce them to it at least. And remember, that's all that we're kind of trying to do. If we can just give them enough that might plant a little seed of doubt in their unbelief, and say, here you go, take off on that and tell me what you find, That's all we're trying to do. It's like planting seeds, but kind of in a different way. Okay? So, you can introduce them to it. One thing you could talk to them about first off was how the Bible was copied down and the transmission of the text. Like how it first started by some of the apostles and people in their circle, and how they wrote down the accounts about Jesus and all the things that he did in his teachings, and how some of them wrote in the first century, and they penned letters to the churches and the congregations and Christians, and addressing different things that were going on, and how they were they would receive those letters, the churches, right? They would receive those letters, they copied them down, okay, and they copied them down because, hey, we've got a letter coming in from the Apostle Peter. Here it's coming from Paul. This is This is good stuff. We need this, right? It's the wonderful Paul and everything. So they're obviously going to receive that. They're going to take it in. They're going to keep it, try to preserve it. And then they're going to make numerous copies of it. Okay? And they're going to do it very carefully as well. And they're also going to preserve them because that's what they were going to be teaching from. Okay? And so, as they would receive the original letter, they would make copies of it, and I'm sure many copies. Back then, you really had a free range of copying that was going on. If it came to the congregation, I mean, I don't think it was out of the question that, you know, if family so-and-so wanted to go and copy it down, well, my family's going to go and copy it down. This is the words of Paul. You know, this is the word. It was very free range. You didn't really get a standardized method of copying things until, I don't know, like the 9th century or so with the monks. Anyway, that's kind of separate. But you had a lot of copies happening. As it would come in, they make copies, okay? But then though, they would send those out. They're sending out these copies to the next place and on to the next congregation, okay? And these copies that were made, they are called this. They're called manuscripts, okay? That's what they're called, all right? And manuscripts, basically all they are is just handwritten copies of the original letters, and that's what they're called. They're written down on papyrus, or they are also written down on what was called parchments. Now, parchments are just animal skins, okay? And there was a particular way that happened, and dried them out and so forth, but very much preservable animal skins to write down on. If you remember, I forget the passage, you may help me out, but you remember when Paul is sitting in prison and he's like, hey, grab my coat and my parchments? You remember that? Well, that's what he says. That's what these are. It's vellum animal skins. That's what he's wanting. He has those, okay? And that's what was used around that time also. But very preservable, okay? So that's manuscripts. It's not at all like the paper we use today. Don't get that out of your mind. That's not what they were writing on, okay? They're writing on very durable stuff, okay? Anyway, so they would copy them down and so on and so on and so on, and before you know it, you've got thousands of copies spread all across the land. Just rapidly being spread because they're being copied down. Okay, I mean, out to Rome, down to Egypt, they're getting spread everywhere, okay? Because they wanted to preserve this writing from an actual apostle or somebody that was close to them, and so copies were being made like crazy. Now, you would think that after so many copies that you would lose uniformity. You would think that you would lose, you know, what was copied from the original. You would think that, but actually, since there were so many of them, and they're all in different geographical areas now, if you were trying to check and see if they were accurate or close to the original, you could actually cross-check these manuscripts and these copies. You could cross-check that with other ones that have gone out, okay? And when then you compare the manuscripts that have gone out across the different times and places, well, then you can determine kind of what the original one actually had said, okay? And maybe what you have is legit, okay? Does that kind of make sense? You got a lot of copies going out, okay? If you're trying to determine if it's right, you can cross-check these, okay? We'll get kind of more into it. But it would kind of be like trying to confirm what somebody said or did by going and speaking to all of the known witnesses. Okay? Well, if they all start saying relatively the same thing, you know you're on solid ground. I kind of had that in my mind. So then, down through history you go. Okay, there's copies, right? There's copies going out. Copies upon copies going out. Down through history we go. Now, we don't have the original. It's long gone. Original is long gone. Okay? You can't find that one. But there were enough copies that were made from the original that when a new manuscript would turn over, it is then compared to all of the other ones that are found. It is compared to bits and pieces of other copies. Lots of comparison going on. Trying to make sure that the copies are good and right. Okay, and if one was found not to be congruent with the other manuscripts, they didn't exactly discard it. They didn't exactly throw it away, but what they would do is they would compare with all of the other ones that were found in different geographical locations to determine if it's legit or not. All right, so and I just covered a whole lot of stuff there that is worthy for you to go and research yourself. I'm trying to make this simple because it's not simple. All right, there's a lot to it, but I'm trying to do the best I can here. Okay, but so you have that idea. So really, to ask the question, has it been tampered with? And how do we really know that it has any resemblance to the original? You would really have to point out to somebody the overwhelming challenge and amount of effort it would take to actually change and tamper with the biblical text that has come down to us, and really how unrealistic that is. Okay? You would also want to help them think about it just with some maybe common sense logic. Okay? Let's not throw this out the door either. Some common sense logic. If they're going to say it's been tampered with, you could ask them, well, which copy? Which copy are they talking about? And when would that have happened? Right? Because there are thousands of manuscripts. There's thousands of copies. All right? Out there that have already been verified, even in multiple languages. And I'll have a little bit of note on that. So it's like, okay, well, what about those? Right? Which copy are you talking about? Also, you could simply ask, who would have done such a thing? I mean, really, who would have actually done that? Try to change it and tamper with it. I mean, if you think about it, if someone really doesn't care about the Bible, if they don't really care about it at all, do you think that they would actually go through all of the trouble and work and tracking down every copy just to change it and tamper with it? I mean, if I don't like a particular book that some theologian wrote, well, it's not like I try and go and buy up every single copy on the earth that has ever been made and go into every library and seminary and everybody's house and every database to find every digital copy just so I can try to change it or tamper with it. No, really, I'm probably just not going to buy it. And I'm probably just going to reject it, or I don't know, just throw it away. So that's something to think about with this as well. I'm not going to do that, right? Instead, I'm not going to give it much attention. So what I'm saying is, people aren't really going to get away, or people aren't really going to go through the massive, and I would say impossible, endeavor it would take to change even just one word of the text that we have. Okay? Like on purpose and do it, maliciously and all of that. People that don't care about it aren't going to do that. They're just going to either reject it or they're just going to throw it away. And I'm especially not going to be able to do that. Like, even if I was going to try to do that, I'm especially not going to be able to do that without somebody noticing and sounding an alarm. That you're not going to get away with that, right? You're not going to be able to get away with changing something as ancient and as huge as the Bible without notice. Okay? That's just not even going to be possible at all. Okay? But people who believed in the Bible, they worked diligently to preserve this. Okay? They treated the Word of God with the utmost and highest respect. Okay? And with caution, very much so. So has it been tampered with? No. Is it safe to say that what we have is accurate to the original? Absolutely. We'll talk more. Okay, but it has been preserved and verified time and again through history. All right, and what actually does end up protecting the text is the fact that we have multiple copies from different places that agree with one another, and if something had been changed, we would be able to compare it with thousands of other manuscripts, and it wouldn't go unnoticed at all. Somebody would sound an alarm if it was trying to get tampered with and changed, okay? They'd say, well, it's not matching up with all these thousands here. It's not matching up with all these thousands over here. And in this language over here, it's going to get rejected quite fast if that was ever to try to really happen, okay? Now, along with that, I think this is kind of in the same argument and conversation. Along with that and explaining to someone that stuff and helping them understand, in the same line of thinking of how it's been preserved, it might also be helpful to talk to them about how the Bible, and especially the New Testament, compares with other ancient writings of history. Okay, because part of where the initial question is coming from is, how can we trust it? How can we trust the Bible? I think it is a fairly good argument a fairly good argument because, as far as trust goes, this is something else to think through. The Bible isn't the only historical book that has been written. Okay, there's more things that are out there, ancient writings of various things that are out there that you can find, that people take and they view as reliable. Okay? And we have evidence for them. But how does it compare? If you put them side by side, how much evidence do we have for these, and how much evidence do we actually have for the Bible? Okay? This is kind of in the same line of thinking. All right? So here are some popular works to consider. Common. Okay? Historians know about these things. Maybe you do as well. Caesar's Gallic Wars. Now, I haven't read all of these, okay, but they're out there. Okay, his Gallic Wars, which was said to be composed between 58 and 50 BC, before Jesus, okay, there are several manuscripts for that, but really only about 10 of them are any good, and the oldest copy comes from about 900 years later than when he actually lived. From BC to 900 years in the future. Okay, that's one of the earliest, oldest copies that we know of for that. This one here, Homer's Iliad. Fewer than 650 Greek manuscripts of that one, but they didn't start getting copied down until the 2nd, 3rd century AD. And he originally composed it in 800 BC. 800 BC. So that's like a 1,000-year gap there between the time we actually start finding manuscripts. Here's another one. Tacitus. Tacitus is a Roman historian. He wrote this work called the Annals of Imperial Rome. It's dated about 116 AD. Quite close to all the Christians and all of that, right? And Jesus. Okay, the first 6 books of this work in that, there's only one manuscript for. The first 6 books of that work. And that one manuscript was copied down about 850 AD. 850 AD. Okay, in that same work, you've got books 11 through 16, and in another manuscript, and that one didn't come out until about the 11th century. Some of the books in that work were actually lost. So between the time he actually got the information and then wrote it down is another huge gap. Okay? That has a point in just a minute. How about this one? We all know this man. Josephus, right? Josephus, 1st century. Jewish historian. 9 manuscripts that we find of his work, The Jewish War. It wasn't until the 10th, 11th, and 12th centuries until those were actually copied down. There is a Latin version from about the 4th century, and then there is a medieval Russian version that comes about from about the 11th and 12th. But 9 of them, only 9 manuscripts of the Jewish War. Then you have the history of, and I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, Thucydides, I think. Anyway, whatever. 460. Did I say that right? Thucydides. There you go. Yeah. 460 to 400 BC. That's old. Okay? 8 manuscripts for that one, and the earliest is found about 900 AD on the other side of the cross. The Republic from Plato has, from what I understand, shaped some Western culture and civilization and philosophy. Plato wrote about 380 BC. He wrote this one. There are somewhere in the range of 200 to 250 manuscripts, but the earliest comes about 900 AD again. So again, another like 1,200 years before somebody copied it down. That's quite a long time. I can't fathom 10. 1,200 years. That's those works. Okay? What about the things of the Bible now? Don't answer it. It's a scam. Let it go to voicemail. Okay, we've got New Testament writings being dated as written anywhere from 50 to 100 AD, roughly. The writings of the New Testament, the books, the letters that we have. 50 to 100 AD. Some of the earliest manuscripts that we found are these. Oh, okay, yeah. So here's some Bible manuscripts now. This is the Chester Beatty Biblical Papyri. Remember I told you they wrote on papyri. Papyri grew along the Nile, close to in Egypt. It was like a type of grass, reed thing. Anyway, they made it into a writing, able to write on. Okay, don't ask me how, but anyway. On papyri. This is the Chester Beatty one, discovered in 1930. This man had a collection of manuscripts, including some New Testament ones. Okay, and he had one that contained portions of the 4 Gospels and the book of Acts, and they date it to the 3rd century. Okay, so he's got Acts in there and the 4 Gospels, and now they're saying it's the 3rd century. He had another one that had portions of letters of Paul, including Hebrews, parts of Hebrews, that dated to about the year 200. Okay, and then another one he had that had portions of Revelation in it that dated, again, to about the 3rd century. That's the Chester Beatty one. You got this one, you got the Bodmer Papyri, discovered in the 1950s in Egypt. It was purchased by this fellow named M. Martin Bodmer. Okay, and these that he bought had some manuscripts that contained most of the Gospel of John, and that one dated to be about 200 AD. And another one with the portions of Luke on it and John, and was dated to be around the 3rd century. So even though they were found in the 50s, they still matched what manuscripts had already been discovered long ago. This one's pretty cool. You ever heard of this one? The John Ryland manuscript? This one's really neat. The John Rylands Library Papyrus, purchased in Egypt in 1920. It was founded by a man named C.H. Roberts of St. John's College in Oxford, while sorting through some papyri in the John Rylands Library in Manchester, England. And that papyrus that he was looking at was a fragment of John's Gospel. with material on it from John chapter 18. It had 5 verses on it, 3 on one side, 2 on the other side of it. It was for front and back, and it measured about 2.5 by 3.5 inches. It was just a fragment. These are not some of them aren't the giant, biggest things ever. Just a fragment. Okay? And they dated it somewhere between 100 and 150 AD. Now, Doug, when did John write his gospel?
Well, most say around the 90s.
Yeah. Well, they're dating this one from 100 to like 150. Well, that's quite close. Very close to when John actually lived. Okay? But it has John 18, 31 to 33 on one side of it, and it has John 18, 37 to 38 on the other side of it. And that's the passage where Jesus is before Pilate. Okay, you remember all of that? It's got that on it. Okay? But again, that one's very huge because it's very close to about the time the Gospel of John was even written, about 80 to 90 or so. All right? Yet it was discovered in Egypt, and so that's a very early copy that had already made it down to Egypt. Well, that's pretty quick. Okay, now that's not all. There's also other forms of manuscripts that were written on parchments, and you have 2 big ones here. You have Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus. This is Sinaiticus, which means from Sinai. It's just the name that was given. Vaticanus meaning from the Vatican. Anyway, a codex is basically like a book. It's kind of similar to the Bible you hold in your hands. Okay, it's like a collection of the parchments or manuscripts, more put together. It's more of a complete set. It's not exactly as isolated as manuscripts some of them were. This is a codex. Okay, it's like a book. Anyway, you have some of those as well, and those 2 in particular are more complete sets, but they both date around AD 350. Okay? Sinaiticus contains most of the Old Testament and is a complete New Testament in Greek, in unsealed Greek, the capital letter Greek. Okay? Vaticanus is most of the Old is most of the Old and most of the New Testament, although it does have some pages that are missing, and so it's not exactly all complete. But anyway, that's those, and that's Esther and Matthew there. Boy, I thought I had another picture. What in the world happened? I thought I had more pictures of that one. Anyway.
Got lost in that transfer from one copy.
Oh, I'm telling you. It got lost. It got lost.
So you can't trust anything.
Let's get a little further real quick. Okay, what I'm saying, the point is, people trust a lot of those ancient writings. They believe that the people who wrote them existed, and they believe them to be true despite the huge gaps that you find from the time they lived and from the time that they wrote them down and started copying them. So if people are going to trust those, then they should have all the more reason to trust the reliability of the Bible, because the Bible has more than 5,000 manuscripts to go off of. Okay? In fact, anybody ever read the book The Case for Christ with Lee Strobel? Oh man, I've been poring over that sucker. It's a great book. Great book. Read it if you haven't. Lee Strobel was an atheist. His wife converted, and he went on a mission, trying to figure it out why. Okay, but anyway, he was a reporter, and anyway, I don't want to give it away. Anyway, in that book, he goes around and he starts interviewing all of these theologians and all of these Bible scholars. Really fascinating. And he sits down with them across the table. And one of those people he interviews is Bruce Metzger. And Bruce Metzger is a theologian. You study any theology at all, you're going to come across his work, along with F.F. Bruce and some others. But he interviews him, and he sits down with him, and one of the things that he says in there, Metzger says this. He says, a new style of writing, more cursive in nature, that would be the minuscule, he said, emerged around AD 800, and it's called minuscule. And he says, look at this, we have about 2,856 of these manuscripts. Then there are the lectionaries, he says, which contain New Testament scriptures in the sequence it was to be read in the early churches at appropriate times during the year. A total of 2,403 of those have been cataloged. He said that puts the grand total of Greek manuscripts at 5,664 now. In addition to the Greek documents, he said there are thousands of other ancient New Testament manuscripts in other languages. There are 8,000 to 10,000 Latin Vulgate manuscripts, plus a total of 8,000 in Ethiopic and Slavic and Armenian. He said, in all, there are about 24,000 manuscripts in existence. In all. So logically,
And that was 50 years ago, by the way.
in 98, when the book was written.
Well,
Or when?
That was when he compiled it. So
Oh, okay, when he did all of his research?
yeah, so that was like 20.
So that bolsters it even more.
Right, we found more since then.
Yeah. That's 50 years ago. Okay? And they're still working all the time on this stuff. Okay? So logically, you would think that people would accept the Bible as being reliable more than they do these other works, because of the substantial amount of evidence that we find. Strobel had talked about that also as being like a mountain of evidence compared to anthills, is how he put it. But you have the manuscripts that are closer to the time of the actual writing, and that bolsters it even more because there's less time in there for things to change. Okay? Acts was written about 60 to 70 AD. And so was Luke and Matthew and Mark may have been even the first gospel written, and that was like 55 to 65 AD. And yet you're finding these manuscripts only a couple generations after those have been written, which is amazing. Okay? So we're not anyway, let's finish up next time. But I know. I could go on. Anyway.
Luke and John, 30 years later, don't conflict.
And that's the thing that we're seeing. That's what I want you to understand. A lot of these that are close together, or they're all agreeing. The manuscripts that they're finding, they are agreeing with one another. Different geographical areas, they pop up. And this one says the same thing this one does. And there's a lot to that. That's very, very compelling evidence, okay? Anyway.